Great. Well, welcome everyone to our Culture First chapter gathering. Well, we're here to discuss our learnings from Culture First Global. Not last week, but the week before. What is time? Where are we? But so excited to connect with many of you, whether you had a chance to go to Culture First Global last time or a few weeks back or not. This will still be a really cool use of your time to learn from what other people kind of took from the content. So my name's Jessie Jacob. I run our Culture First Global Chapters program. We now have over 100 global chapters of people around the world united in the shared belief that a better world of work is possible, and we want to do something about it. This chapter's community alone consists of over 10,000 community members. So we're pretty excited about that. I'm joined today with Alana Bennett and Mikey Ellis, who run our Melbourne chapter. Excited to facilitate with them today. And they had a chance to close out the APAC region. If you all had a chance to join that community session, and they're amazing human beings and wonderful facilitators. Can't wait to hear all the things that you both learned as well. We didn't get a chance to geek out yet. So, all right. So I'm going to just share like a little bit of, if this is your first Culture First gathering, then you will get to, let's see, there we go. This is your first Culture First gathering. This will be a great starting place. And if it's not, it's a refresher of why you come here and why you're a part of this community. So what is the Culture First community? Well, community at CultureAmp is where global people leaders and change agents come together to be inspired by their peers, to ideate and to share best practices to create a better world of work. That lives in a lot of different areas. Obviously, that we have our chapters program, which is what this gathering is all about. We had Culture First Global, which was 2 weeks ago. That's another area of where we think people, leaders, and change agents come together to share ideas and best practices. We have our digital Slack community with People Geek Slack. We have over 25,000 people in there sharing ideas, resources, jobs, events. So if you're not in there, check that out. We think of the community also exists with our podcasts and our Geekly newsletter that comes out every week with all sorts of really cool articles and resources. And obviously the podcast is full of amazing speakers and thought leaders. We have Geek Ups, which is part of our regional field marketing event. And then we always say, wherever our campers, our CultureAmp employees are interacting with community members, that's also where community happens. But we're a group of people around the world united in the shared belief that a better world of work is possible. And by golly, we're willing to do something about it. We're all about unlocking humanity at work through inspiring experiences, purposeful connections. And like I said, we have 100 plus global chapters, and we have 5 core principles that hold all of us together. This is the glue of how we ask you all to show up with our gatherings. So the first one, we ask you all today to show up with fostering belonging and acceptance, letting people show up for who they are and feel seen and appreciated and valued for just being them. We ask that you have the willingness to reflect and grow, turn the mirror around and say, what can I do? How am I showing up in the world of work? What kind of impact can I have? Have the courage to be vulnerable. For you Brene Brown fans out there, if we have the courage to be vulnerable, it gives permission for other people to do the same. Putting learning into action. This is like the whole theme of the next hour we have together of like, how did you take in the information from Culture First Global? And then how have you implemented it into the way that you live, into the way that you work? Maybe you've already had some things that you've implemented, or maybe something from this conversation sparks that. And then the last principle is connection inside, business outside. So we ask that you connect as human beings here. And if that leads to you all connecting outside of this to do business together, that's awesome. But networking and pushing business cards isn't the primary purpose of the gathering. All right, so you've heard enough from me. I'm really excited to hand it off to Mikey and Alana to get this conversation going. Really excited to hear from you all about your takeaways and what's resonated from Culture First Global. And I'll share a link if you didn't attend and you want to watch the recordings. I'll make sure to drop that in the chat too. But Mikey, Alana, this is such a treat. I'm handing it over to you all. Thanks for collaborating with me.
Thank you so much, Jessie. Thank you for that beautiful intro, and incredible that we are where we are. To think over the last few years how huge this community has grown has just been amazing. And I always love to think it's like, when you throw a pebble across a lake and it kind of creates that ripple effect. And I think that has certainly been my experience. The more that you meet like-souled people who are really united around this purpose, it kind of feels like they talk to a couple of people, and they then talk to a couple of people. And I think that's what we've seen kind of explode over the last few years, which insanely cool.
So cool. It's amazing.
So cool.
I cannot believe it.
And you live it every day, which is super cool, right? Just be worth, before we go too much further, just getting a sense of who has had the opportunity, either to watch any of the sessions live from the global first session itself, or any of the recorded session. Just if you can use your emojis or chuck your hand up, whatever, for those of you maybe that aren't on screen. I'm conscious of, just kind of maybe setting some context for us, or if there were some of you that haven't yet had the opportunity to get into some of those sessions. If any of you walk and do podcasts, you can do this with these sessions as well, which is super cool. I have gone back, even though I watched all of them, I've gone back and listened to a couple already, because I went, oh, there was so much good gold. I can see a couple of kind of people putting hands up. Mikey, I might throw over to you to kind of share maybe what kind of stood out for you on the day. And then I think let's get kind of into a conversation. There are a few people putting some thumbs up. Awesome to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having us back, Jessie, and Demario. Big props to you and everyone behind the scenes who was on screen and behind the scenes, who made that day such a wonderful experience for us all. And it was great to look at those intro slides you had and think back to the people geek ups. I think that was my first introduction to this community. 2015, 2016 in Melbourne, we had geek ups that would happen, and I'd attend and learn from other practitioners who are doing great work in this space. And it was just such wonderful opportunity to be part of this community, and I love how it's grown. And yeah, thanks for being such a driving force behind that community. So I guess what we're here to do today is look at some takeaways, and what we'd really love to do is hear from you. There's probably a number of people who weren't able to see or attend, or perhaps haven't even gone back and viewed some of the sessions. So the content might be relatively new, but I'm sure there's a lot of people who were there, and we'd really just love to hear from you. And this is us facilitating a conversation. I'll really happily share some of my takeaways, because it's been great to reflect on those. But we'd love to hear from you. So I'll share a couple that really stood out for me, and if that triggers anything for you, any inspiration or reflections from the day, just drop it in the chat. Let's use the chat to instigate those conversations. And if you've got any questions, if you've got any comments, any feedback, any ideas, or any thoughts that you have from the day, we'd love to hear from you. Look, I think Didier was one of the first speakers, and what he really raised for me was something quite present in my life, which is this kind of being in a threat state, an emotional and physiological state of threat. And to be completely honest, there's a lot that's happening in the world, globally, locally, and that's really, I'm really cognizant of that. I find it hard to separate my personal experience or my work experience from that, and I think I really appreciated him acknowledging that, because it's the context in which we're all turning up to do our best work, but there are some significant challenges that we're facing. And so just acknowledging that and moving from a threat to challenge was something that really stood out for me. That was a really great way to frame the day. I think for me it was quite validating to hear that. So that was one of the first things that really stood out. Yeah, just noticing some comments come through here. How about you, Alana? Is there anything from either Didier's Prezzo? I think Dr. Linda Hill was next, and she talked a lot about leadership in this context as well. So what stood out for you?
Yeah, I have to say I am a huge fan of Didier, but I was really I had one of those kind of deep moments of like, at the end of his session, like he really said a number of things I think hit home for a lot of people, and to your point, I love the way you talked about threat, and I think it's it's so Sarah's put in the chat this mind body. I mean, we have to be really conscious of the environment that we're all living in the moment, right? It isn't just about work. We've got these huge events happening in our world that is deeply impacting who we are as humans and how we can show up. And I know one of the businesses that I'm working with are headquartered in Tel Aviv, and it is deeply impacting their work, what is going on in Israel at the moment, right? So it's hard to not take a moment to just acknowledge that the thing that I really walk away from that event, Seth talked about it as well, is we are deeply human. That, like, let's start there, right? We are deeply human, and to not be impacted by what is going on in the world and still expect our people to come to work every day and show up and do their best work, that is a really hard ask in times like this. And on the flip side, though, what really stood out with Didier's session is he talked about, strong cultures drive high standards, but high standards don't need to be unrelentingly brutal on the humans that are in that organization. And I think that ability to, as a business, to step back and say, what does it mean? What do standards mean in our business? Where are we excusing standards? Where are we maybe just kind of skimming over the surface? I quite often say to people, we do a really great job in businesses holding ourselves account to things that are easy to report on: sales numbers, customer service metrics, right? It's like we've got the data. It's like the data doesn't lie. When it comes to culture, whilst we have, things like engagement surveys and pulse surveys and all this sort of stuff, is how do we start documenting the culture that we are aspiring to be, so that we have something that we come back to and we say, are we living this? Like, have we veered from this that we all agreed to? And I kind of feel like we're at this moment where we have to start to say, how do we help our businesses really start to articulate the culture that they want to drive beyond, just the values that are on the wall or the kind of the mission statement that we're driving towards. Sorry, I know I've done lots of like blur, but that they were kind of key things that I've definitely still been ruminating on post the event.
I'm going to follow on to what you all are talking about with Didier's presentation, which is like that us versus them mentality. But even just that shift of like, a lot of us are really hyper focused on how do we drive revenue at the moment, rather than how do we build a culture that creates revenue. Even just like that mindset shift. But the question that he posed that I'm still like processing is like, because we all are kind of functioning from this like place of fear and scarcity as organizations, and like and as individuals, like, how are our threat-based approaches right now impacting us? And that question, I was like, whoa, like, like, how is that showing up in our marketing? Is that a good long-term thing? Or like, even just being thoughtful about that question. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, the scarcity mindset is so fascinating in itself, right? If in any element of our life, if we were to think about the conversation we have with ourselves when we're in that mindset, when we are coming from scarcity, rather than go, if I was in an abundance mindset, how might I reframe that? We all know that the huge mental shift that has, right? Yeah, huge. Mikey, share. I can see lots of nodding.
Yeah. Oh, it's again, I just love that is the context in which the rest of the day was framed. It felt very honest. It felt very true and validating. I think a lot of the time when we go to events like this, it can be, let's just showcase the best case scenario, and let's showcase what, you know, ideal state and situation looks like, without really acknowledging some of the actual challenges and some of the very real human challenges that we have. And I think throughout the day there was a lot of acknowledgement of that, which felt really, really validating. And that kind of it was referenced in Dr. Linda Hill in her presentation as well. Just some really wonderful data from, you know, quite a macro, like big organizational, like multinational organizational perspective. When it comes to leadership, you know, she was talking about 3 imperatives. And the first one was managing yourself, then managing your network, and then managing your team. But what I loved was the fact that it started with managing yourself as a leader. And I think that, you know, is something that we can't avoid. We bring our state, we bring our stories, we bring our experiences to the work that we do as leaders. And I think to take responsibility for that, which is something Seth Godin, Damon referenced in the conversation with Seth. In Seth's book, he talks about taking responsibility and giving praise. I think that's what it was. But the idea of taking responsibility and from Dr. Linda Hill, to manage yourself as a leader first. I think to take responsibility for that is such a essential role, or essential aspect of being a leader. And so that really stood out as well. I appreciated that perspective.
I'm going to add on to that, which is like, it comes back to one of our culture first principles around the, like, having the willingness to reflect and grow. And what that means to me is like being the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of like what was coming up from our content was around like the manager effectiveness that came up, which is like, if these managers are like modeling the like behavior that we say is important here from a cultural perspective, then like other employees are also going to do the same and are more motivated as a result. And like, we have data to actually show that, which I think is exactly what you're kind of saying, you know, like we need to manage ourselves first, because that impacts, that trickles down. Yeah.
Yeah. And to extend on that, you know, the reality is our leaders and our people that are managing people are in the biggest overwhelm they're probably ever been in, right? And so the challenge is, what I love about that is, you know, leading yourself first is actually giving permission to everyone to be a part of that role, right? Not just because you officially have the title of being the leader of that team, but actually if we, you know, I kind of like this idea of, if we, you know, we skill up everyone, all the boats rise, right? Not just some of them. And so I think the nice approach to that is, you know, I often say is, as a leader, one of the best things you can do is involve your team in as much of what might impact them as possible, right? This kind of co-design, you know, nothing for us without us, right? I love that approach. And so when we focus really intently from a skill development perspective on enabling everyone in organizations to assume a leadership role as a state, not a title, we actually give, you know, permission to people who are in the leadership title role to let some of the reins go, right? And to share some of that responsibility amongst their team, where that's appropriate, of course. But I think there's this kind of, you know, I always hear this conversation of, yes, but we're just asking our leaders to do one more thing. So how do we get really clear on then what is, you know, if I am the leader title of this team, what are like the top 3 things non-negotiable I need to lead, right? Versus how do we do the rest as a team? I think there's so much we can take from just that mindset alone.
Yeah, it's something that came out in the data that was shared. I think it was some of the Culture recent data and some research that Rachel and Chris shared about manager effectiveness was really interesting. That came after Linda Hill, who again talked about the challenge of becoming that transition from being a star performer into becoming a manager or a leader of a team. And and something that a note that I took down, which really resonated with me, was that it's less about, you know, as you become a manager of a team or a leader of a team, it's less about authority and more about interdependence. And that speaks to what you were saying there, Alana, which is, how do we involve the team? It's not you know, about me directing everything. It's about how do we work together? How do we foster collaboration, connection, and interdependence? And this is interesting because it's a skill that needs to be learned, and it's one that, you know, it might be a very different skill to what it is that got that person into a managerial or leadership role in the first place. Often we have people who are you know, excel at what they do, and then as a result of that are you know, promoted into leadership positions, and you then start leading people as opposed to a process. And so that need to develop the interdependence and interpersonal, interrelational awareness is a skill that needs to be learned and taught. And I think that was a really, really interesting acknowledgement.
I put some notes, like just a few little things that I wrote down from the manager effectiveness session in case that's helpful. But like, definitely want to hear from any other people. Would anyone be willing to come off mute and share with us? Or you're welcome to just share in the chat, but just like anything that was resonating from the content from you all. Nikki, I know you were there. I know Nikki was at Culture First Global.
Okay, I can I haven't gone back and looked at any of the videos, nor have I really looked at my notes, except just as I was coming into this call. Something that I've highlighted in my notes, though, from Seth's talk is the idea of commitments. So commitments in addition to values that we make to each other in our organization. So I guess I highlighted that because I thought, oh, that's something that I should bring into my work when I'm working with leaders and organizations. So wondering if anyone else, and I haven't gone back and read the book that he talks about it in, so I don't even really know what the commitments are, but it was something that I wanted to go and look into. So does anyone know what he's talking about, have used it, in what context? Because it was just something that interested me.
I love that. I didn't see that session, I don't think, but that's cool though. So commitments in addition to values, because we often hear, oh, these are the behaviors that align with these values, but you don't really think often about what are the things we're actually committing to doing, specific actions almost. Is that what the content was is that how you interpret it, Nikki?
Yeah, well, I've just written the note to myself. So commitments that we make to each other in an organization. So yeah, I guess it's around the behaviors based on the values. So I guess like the values are almost like an umbrella, and then, well, what does that look like? What do we commit to each other? So yeah, so as I said, I actually haven't gone and looked into it yet. It was just something that interested me, and I did want to go and look at it further, and not sure if other people here know what it actually does mean.
I read the book, the song or Songs of Significance, Seth's most recent book, and like all of his writing, the thing that really and how he speaks and what he speaks about, the thing that really struck me is his humility, and he really encourages people to be human, to be humble, to show up and do work that matters. And that's something that he mentioned in the conversation with Damon, whereby it's a leader's, what's everybody's responsibility to create conditions for people to show up, to do work that matters. And we don't always know what that is. And we don't always know how to do it. And he, you know, and it's not, he said it's not easy or it's not natural. And so that felt, it felt quite reassuring to go, all right, so it's okay to not know, and it's okay to get it wrong, and it's okay to be uncertain. But yes, it's a responsibility to show up and do the work. And I found that to be really reassuring. And just coming back to that, that one of those quotes I mentioned earlier on, I got it wrong. He said, take responsibility and give credit. And I think that's a really, you know, going back to that interdependence, I think that's a really wonderful way to frame the work that we do, and the way in which we talk about the work that we do and the work that others do as well. So there's a beautiful humility in what it is that he had to share.
I actually have written at the top of my notes page, OMG, such a nice man, exclamation point. I was just, I'd never heard him speak before. I hadn't looked at his TED Talks, and I just sat there going, oh my goodness, he's so nice. And
Yeah.
it just, yeah, everything about him, I was like making notes going, I must read all of his stuff. I must learn more about him. Of course, I knew his name and I've heard of him, but I hadn't really looked into what he had to say. And he was very inspiring.
He's so relatable, isn't he? Like, you know, he makes it, he's, you know, uber intelligent and done so much, but he just makes it so easy to relate to him, and talk in a way in which we all walk away from that session going, I can do something with this now, right? I had this moment. He said, what was it? We don't get tomorrow over again, so we might as well most of it. And I was like, wow, that felt big, right? That felt big. Yeah, I think is amazing. Nikki, I'm with you. I was like, I've actually got a couple of his books that I'm like kind of part way through. I quickly went into the bookshelf, was like, finish reading those. But just to comment on the commitments part, I think it links really nicely to what Didier was talking about around standards, right? Like, I think these are like, what are the ways in which we all agree that we operate in an organization that, you know, to some respect, they can be an extension or, you know, kind of a rolling cascade of what your values are. I know in some of the work that I've done, you know, one of the ones that I often talk a lot about with clients is like, where are we nice versus where do we need to be honest? And what's that different? Like, what does that mean? Because we do that, right? We don't want to offend people. But then in doing that, we're probably not actually having some of the harder conversations to actually get the work moving in the right direction, right? It kind of slows us down. And there is something so powerful around working in teams and helping them define what does that mean in the context in which we work. It's almost like you've got your backup plan before you've got into the scenario, and there's this confidence it gives the team to say, okay, so if we find ourselves in this scenario where perhaps we're being nice versus being honest, you know, I say to teams, what's your word? What's your word to call bullshit, excuse my language, in that moment, to say, hey, we're being, you know, and I've got teams that have gone like, it's tomato sauce. It's like a stupid word, because what it does is it brings everyone's real consciousness into the moment to say, oh gosh, we're being nice and not honest. Okay, what are the commitments we've made, or what are the standards that we've agreed to operate, and how do we kind of lean into that conversation? And I've seen that work really well in teams. And as I say, because they've had the conversation before the fact, it's kind of given them this courage and confidence that when they then fall into that trap of being nice versus honest, they actually know what to do in that moment. And I think that's part of our challenge, right? Is when we find ourselves in those moments that people don't necessarily know the right way to have the conversation. So I've seen them working that way. I'm not sure if that's, you know, specifically how kind of Seth is talking about them, but I've seen that as a great way to, that standard piece that everyone agrees to operate by.
I wrote a quote in the chat, so apologies for like 3 to 5 typos in one sentence. But Seth Godin said, "We need your ruckus, we need your care, we need your responsibility, because if not you, then who?" And I just love that. It's very inspiring. And also, what comes up for me is like, we kind of are still in this like place of scarcity. Like a lot of HR professionals are getting laid off at the moment. Like there's a lot of us versus them mentality. How are we supposed to like bring up these hard conversations when like we are afraid of the ramifications of it? Like, how can we bring this up without fear? And so that's what's coming up for me is like, gosh, we're in such a like intense like area, and like, yes, high performers want like constructive feedback, but it seems like we're like back to the basics of like, how do we have hard conversations? How do we give feedback? And like, how do we call each other out on maybe some of our short-sighted or threat-based approaches that we're taking to things without this like fear of like, am I going to lose my job if I like stir the pot, you know?
Yeah.
And also so many HR professionals are trying to like, you know, justify for budget to get the spend that they need on tools or resources or L&D things. And I don't know, that's what's coming up for me. Would love to hear. Yeah, it does come back to radical candor and psychological safety. Sarah and Jennifer. Yeah, it's so true though. But like, we're back to like the business, speaking the business of culture, and how do we build trust and psychological safety with our teams?
Yeah. And I think, Jessie, that is a real challenge in itself, right? In terms of speaking the business of culture, is we historically haven't done that very well. And so I think if you think about, again, the environment in which organizations are operating at the moment, you know, there is so many, you know, factors that are impacting the performance of organizations. It takes a really brave, committed, vulnerable leadership team that actually says, we don't have as many resources as what we have done, and we're putting a priority on the culture. I don't think that there are an abundance of organizations that are making that call right now, unfortunately. I think all of us in this room, we're all aligned on that, but I appreciate that for a lot of people who are operating in those people roles in organizations, I would imagine there's a lot of tension in those conversations at the moment, and would love if there are any of you that are navigating some of those conversations right now to share what your experience is.
Hi there, my name's Helena Ferrari, and I'm so excited to be in this conversation. I'm coming to you from Orange County, California, and I've had the opportunity to attend many Orange County Culture First programs. I'd love to chime in on building a culture and getting the executives buy-in. From a culture perspective, I found a really good way is to speak their language in data and percentages when it comes to turnover, offer to hire, engagement, of really helping them understand that driving a really robust culture really does affect the top and bottom line results. And I think one of the things from a C-suite leader is to help the leaders understand that they also need to be acting and behaving in the culture that they want to create. And by then, because leaders within our organizations are very front-facing, they're interviewing, they're talking and messaging within their teams, is that I think one of the big things that I see is investing in leadership as far as the behavioral piece of acting, and not only just saying, it's not just the values on the wall, it's much more than that. Yeah. And really looking at it from a business perspective in dollars and cents. So for example, one of the companies that as I've served, they had 58% turnover, and it cost them about $5 million in a look back. So the thing is that if you talk to them in shocking terms, it will get you the budget that you need, even if you just ask for a portion of it. So I just wanted to say, and I'm so excited to hear some of the Aussies out there. I actually lived in Melbourne for 14 years.
I can hear a hint of an accent. I could hear a hint of an accent.
But I just want to let you know from working in the US of really lean and mean companies that are very short on HR, or they think of HR as not a value added contributor. Yes, we are, and we should feel that we have the courage to stand up and say, well, wait a minute, we're the ones, we're rallying your people, and your people are driving your revenue. They're driving your customer service metrics. They're hitting the top line. So I look at it from a business perspective of just, I guess, reshaping those conversations.
Thank you so much for sharing. I love all of that. And yeah, I can really empathize with the you know, that number of, you know, the turnover and translating that into financial impact. I do think that is one of, you know, I know you get a lot of people that say, oh, really, how accurate is that? But it's just, I think it's just one way to start to say, look, it's not 100% perfect, right? But it gives an indication of what this is costing us. I was actually saying to someone yesterday, I was working with a client on looking at their meeting structure, and it was crazy, right? I'm sure everyone who's on this call has experienced that over the last number of years. And so we did this activity where we said, okay, all of the leadership team that are in this meeting, what is it costing us every time we have a meeting? Let's get our salaries and work that out. The CEO was mortified at what a leadership team meeting was costing him with his leaders, right? So we then enabled us to have this really high impactful conversation to say, okay, so he values money, right? So that was the great way is to determine what he valued. And then we were like, right, what are we redesigning for then? How do we make sure that money, when you spend it, is so jam-packed full of value that you got my return on investment in that regard? And it's similar, right, Helen, what you're saying is how do we start to communicate the impact? And it's like, how do we spend this money more wisely? If we're going to spend millions of dollars in turnover, is there a better way to do it? So it's such a great way.
I love that. Thank you, Alana. One of the things that I challenge the leadership team is have someone pose in their interview cycle as a candidate, and get them to give them feedback of whether they would or wouldn't work for their company. I tell you, that gets the executive leadership team's attention also, is why they can't find top talent and why they can't keep top talent. It's just it's a great, I guess, a different way to look at it from a business perspective. So thanks, Alana. Appreciate.
Yeah, love that. Any other thoughts? That's a great conversation. One of the other things I did take away on a totally different kind of end of the spectrum now is if any of you did manage to dial in live to the closing session, which you may not have for APAC, for those of you that aren't in this region, Mikey and I finished the session by actually doing a moment of gratitude and just really extending the invitation to people to say, are we thanking people? Are we showing appreciation enough to those around us? And I have to admit, it started this amazing ripple effect for me personally post the session. I did put a couple of posts on LinkedIn after the Global First just to kind of share my experience, but I had someone who had reached out on LinkedIn who was live in the session just to say thank you for something. And I was like, wow, gosh, that makes you feel amazing, right? And I just had this moment of, why don't we do this more often in the flow of work? And perhaps, we're waiting for the formal processes within organisations at which we, truly kind of celebrate the people we work with. But what I recognised was so many people individually sent me messages and had said, I messaged someone and got a message from someone off the back of just that kind of invitation to do so. And so I put it as a note in my calendar once a week to just say thank you for something that someone's done, right? I think it is so, again, it's that ripple effect. When you experience it yourself, you really want to quickly kind of pass it on. So that was a really big takeaway, a surprising takeaway for me, in that, it really lasted beyond the session.
I love that. I've been sending out like recorded videos or audio messages to people. I don't know. I just enjoy getting those from people. And then also it's a little bit faster too to send that. And sometimes it's not the best when you're like, if someone needs like actual details and things, but if you're sending a moment of gratitude, yes. Oh, so I did a very similar thing. Thanks, Sarah. So, I did a very similar thing closing out the sessions in America and EMEA, where I met Kevin Monroe, this like other facilitator recently, who calls it a tag, a thanks, appreciation, or gratitude. You go and tag someone. So a thanks, appreciation, or gratitude with a video or an audio message. And I just like love that. It feels so good.
Yeah.
But
feels like tag is a big game in my house with two little boys. So I'm going to tell them, could we do it a different way so we're not pushing each other on stairs and
yes,
to play tag.
We rolled out, so internally at Culture Amp, we've rolled out like a shout outs feature that we have, like it's a Slack integration. And so now people can shout out other people onto the team and like share kudos and stuff. But like, there were so many people that shared kudos that you're like, oh, that's like why we do this. Like, like I feel seen. Thank you.
Yes.
We especially need that right now with like performance being a challenge for many organizations, and turnover rates and engagement can be down, especially if you went through a layoff. Even tag or a moment of gratitude or appreciation is huge.
It's funny, Jessie, you said that someone actually had reached out to me post seeing that post on gratitude and appreciation, said, I wonder if, like when someone leaves an organization, we celebrate them so hard in that moment for all that they've contributed, right, and their impact. And I wonder if actually we did that along the way, maybe people wouldn't leave our organizations, because it is, right? I mean, how many of us are sat in some of those farewell sessions and you're like, really feeling the love. But actually, if I'd felt that love, maybe in the moment that I was in the organization, maybe I wouldn't be leaving.
+1. Mikey, I feel like you had something to say.
I just couldn't agree more with what you're saying and what you're sharing and what you're doing when it comes to gratitude. And I think that's a really important point to make, Alana, that often we leave it too late to acknowledge people and the work that they do. And yes, everybody turns up to do their job, and that's expected of them. It's expected of us. It's expected of everybody. And geez, it's so much easier to do when you are just acknowledged for that. And I think I think in terms of return on investment, as a strategy, as a leader, or as a human being, the return on your investment for a thanks and appreciation or gratitude is like it's immeasurable, and the impact that it has, you really can't underestimate what impact that is going to have on somebody. It might just be the thing that's going to get them through the day, and it might just be the thing that's going to elevate their performance as well. But I think on a very real sort of level, at times when people are challenged, it's you can't underestimate how important that is. And we spend so much time at work with people, and we are we're expected to be, you know, high performers, and and in order to do that, we're going to have to be vulnerable. So I think we need the support of some appreciation, some recognition, some validation, not only for what we do, but for who we are and for how we do it. And I think that just goes unsaid too often. And so, yeah, I just want to reiterate how valuable and important and just good humaning it is to do that. It really does have a magnifying effect as well, because I think when you receive that kind of feedback, you want to pay it forward. You know, you want to respond, and you want to kind of keep that beautiful momentum going. So I think that's a really lovely way to round it out.
Okay, tying that back to Seth Godin, he said that he was like, humans are not a resource and they need to be treated as people. And if we treat them like a machine, then it's just going to end poorly. And then I love that he said, like, we have AI to get a bunch of mediocre work done at scale.
Right?
I love that so much.
Totally.
But I'm just having a moment of like, also an internal reflection, like courage to be vulnerable moment here. Like we had an internal culture meeting and it said, like, you know, push through to the end of Q4. And I kind of had this moment where I was like, I'm tired of pushing through. Like I'm ready to like celebrate the wins I just had this entire year. And I also want to be strategic about next year. So I'm having this like, yeah, of course there's things I want to accomplish before the end of the year, but like, can we stop chasing the goalposts and just celebrate some wins for a minute? Jeez Louise.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's
I think that is so real, right? We're heading towards the end of the year. I don't know, I was having some conversation with some people yesterday who were like, I don't feel like I've really had a moment to recover from COVID, right? I think depending on where in the world you are and what your lockdown conditions were, it was a really tough time for a lot of people. And I think this unrelenting kind of pushing to extrapolate more from people, that is resources, right? It's like, how do we suck every little bit of blood and bone from you? And I feel like people are kind of like, you know, I'm tired now. I kind of want to have this nice wind down, right, until the end of the year. But I think in these moments, this is where certainly I would love people in organizations to be able to have the courage to have the conversation that says, what is so important? The two things that we need to know by the end of the year. And let's focus on those and not the, 5,000 other things that might be floating as new ideas in someone's mind that got distracted by the bright, shiny thing, depending on what sort of organization. If you're working with CEOs versus founders, we all know they're a very different blood of leader, right?
I think that just sort of takes me back to something Helena shared earlier on when it comes to justifying, this kind of work, whether it be culture or appreciation. Often it can be seen as a bit superfluous to the real work, the actual work, the work that brings in the revenue. It's learning just to kind of speak the language of whoever it is you're working with, and knowing what it is that they value and knowing what it is that they need to hear. And so, adapt. I think again, that's just good leadership, good humaning. It's understanding the needs of the people that you're working with, and validating them for the work that they do. And so that's going to look different for different people. It's knowing those languages of appreciation or love languages, or knowing that kind of feedback style that different people have. I think if you can invest a little bit of time just knowing what that is for the people that you are communicating with, I think that goes a long way to helping people feel seen and heard, and also ultimately get your message across, which is we all need to be looking out for each other and to support each other. And just one last thing too, when it comes to checking in how people are going, I think there's a follow-up question, like, how are you doing? And I think the next question is like, how are you really doing? And I think, there's a necessary container that needs to be built around that in order for that conversation to be to be a psychologically safe one. But I think that's an area that we can really invest a lot more resources, training, upskilling, and practical, to practice in how to have those conversations, because I think they're the ones that are going to really unlock so much of what it is that we are here to do, which is, drive performance, but what really underlies that, or what are some barriers to that? And I think understanding what people are really dealing with is a gateway to unlocking some of that potential and performance.
100%. Love that. I just dropped, I don't know if anyone's seen the Atlassian playbook on the user manual before, but it's this really cool activity you can do with a team to kind of have that moment, right? Where you might share things like, what is my appreciation language? When do I best operate? How do I like to receive feedback? I have seen these work so well in teams when you're joining organizations, or particularly if you're in a business where you do lots of project work and so you're forming teams all the time, is make it a ritual as part of your kind of project team formation, where you have a conversation as a project team to say, this is who I am, and then agree, how do you best work together, knowing what you know about the individuals that are working on that project? How might you give feedback, to that early conversation we had? How might we appreciate and recognize the amazing work we do along the way? How do we hold ourselves account? It's a really, really great tool. So if you haven't seen it, click the link. It's fab.
I love this. I'm going to send this out to everyone after too. I had a very similar conversation with the Abu Dhabi and Dubai chapters around their takeaways from Culture First Global last week. And someone said, well, we have these business models of B2B and B2C. And then I was like, how about we do H to H, human to human business model? And I was like, dang, that's so good.
So good.
I love that so much.
Yeah, so good. And it's not half to half. It's not another performance metric, right? Like, just to be really clear.
Exactly.
Oh, so good.
All right. Well, maybe we should wind down and do some sort of checkout.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
It's been a treat. Oh my gosh. The notes of takeaways continue for me. I've had a book that I'm like reading to you all. So ridiculous. So good. Maybe just like drop us, how about we drop like a sentence in your, like in the chat, like just one sentence, what you're taking away. Some of you have already started to share your your thoughts of thank you, but would love if you would just drop a sentence in the chat of just like one takeaway from today. Would love to hear from some of you. But I loved Andrea and Joanna had some really wonderful things. Thank you for sharing your takeaways. So good. Yeah, amazing. Cost of holding meetings. Yes. Oh,
it's a little bit like a Pandora's box as well. When you never look at meetings the same again.
For sure. Oh, we love catching up and hearing from you, Nikki. Thanks for sharing. Not human resources. Human resources has been going through a rebrand for the last like 5 years, I feel like.
Hallelujah, right?
Yeah, it's cool. I feel really hopeful about our industry, actually. I really do. Like we are like shifting even the language that we're talking about, like human resources, shifting from people experience to people ops to people and culture, and also just like leveling up as professionals with like, how do we speak the business of culture? How do we show like, this is how much it's costing us. This is how much meetings are costing us.
Yeah.
Like I'm feeling really hopeful that as we continue to evolve as an industry, we're going to continue to have even more impact at the executive level when we we got to play the game,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much. You want to do a clap out?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. So This is a very culture first thing. We'll send out an email with this recording plus a link to get the session recordings as well. But very culture first thing. We had a welcome and a purpose. We had a chance to, work and reflect with one another and connect. We talked about how we're going to put our learnings into action and things like that. And now here we are at the close. We had to check out. And so a very culture first thing is leading a clap out. So what Alana is going to count us to 3. She's going to go 1, 2, 3, and we're all going to clap. And then the Zoom meeting's just going to shut off. So even if you're not on camera, just humor us and do this with us. It'll be fun. Right. So, does everyone understand what's going to happen? Alana's going to go 1, 2, 3, then we're going to clap and the Zoom meeting's going to shut off. Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, everyone.
Steal this idea,
Thank
please.
you.
All right. Ready, Alana?
Ready. 1, 2, 3.